Hello, everybody. This is Tom Eckert here. You're listening to my podcast, Numerology, a GPS for the soul. This is your place to learn about the true power of numerology and how to use it to bring out the best in yourself, understand your loved ones better, take wise decisions, and prepare for your future. In other words, how to live your life aligned with your true destiny. Take your time to educate yourself and share these podcasts with your friends and family so they too can enjoy the great benefits of numerology. Enjoy! Hello and welcome to all my listeners. I am super excited to dive deeper today into a very special number 2. Soon you will understand why it is so special. But as always before, if you are new here, then first of all, I want to welcome you. In this podcast, we discuss numerology as a path for inner transformation, growth, and self-understanding. I personally, as a numerologist, attempt to make numerology accessible and applicable for everyday life matters and ground it in a way that it can be used to improve our lives, to make us more conscious, aware, and more whole. Now, a couple of things you should know if you want to dive deeper into numerology. First of all, I highly recommend you get yourself a numerology reading. Getting to know yourself, getting to know your core numbers, getting to know the weather forecast of your life. What every year holds in store for you, what the general trajectory of your life is. It's one of the best ways to know the power of numerology and get to know yourself. You can contact me through my website link. It's provided in the podcast description and the episode description, and book yourself a reading. Secondly, if you're defining or redefining your career and wish to pursue numerology as a career path, I want to remind you that I offer a full path of certification from beginner to expert numerologist. Again, you can check out the link in the podcast description. And if you haven't done so yet, please join my Facebook numerology group. The link is found in the podcast's main page. You can also find it on Facebook under the name Numerology GPS for the soul. Okay, my friends. So having said that, and without further ado, let us dive into the world of subtle, deep, and beautiful number 2. If you've listened to some of my previous episodes about the numbers, you've probably noticed that every number has some quality that stands out more than all other numbers. Number 2 is not different in that way, and I can say that without a doubt it is the most sensitive number of all. This sensitivity makes the 2 into a very emotional but also very spiritual number. It opens doors to feeling and intuition that can be very subtle and very refined. Right? So you're definitely going to hear a lot the word sensitivity. And having said that, let us dive a little deeper into what that means. What this beautiful and tender number holds in store for us. And I'll start first of all by explaining the difference of sensitivity versus emotionality. But hey, one thing I want to say before I keep talking. So first of all, my usual base home is in Berlin, Germany, and that's where I record all the episodes. However, I am right now visiting Israel, which is my home country. And I must be honest and frank with you, Israel is a little bit more noisy. So please forgive me if there are some background noises. I don't have a studio here, and so There may be some noises coming from the outside. Just bear with me. It's what it is. We're here for numerology. We'll bear this together. So coming back to sensitivity versus emotionality. Many think that number 2 and number 6 are very similar. And in truth, there is a distinct difference between the two. And I'm not saying there are no common denominators, because there are. In fact, when I teach number combinations, which is how the numbers behave as one entity when coming together, 2 and 6 are considered harmonious, which means they are similar and they understand each other well, creating a certain harmony, a certain, we can say, wavelength or third entity that makes sense and works well with one another. But still, there's something we need to understand. While 6 deals with emotions, right? More like the aspect of feeling different, a range of emotions such as love, expectation, disappointment, wanting to create a familial sense of bonding, a sense of home, a community, an exchange. I give you and you give me, and by doing that we form a family, form a unit. Number 2 deals much more with sensitivity. It's not so much about emotion as with sensitivity, sensing. And by the way, you can listen to my episode about number 6 if you haven't done so yet, and understand more and more what that energy really stands for after you finish listening to this episode. So sensitivity is really the quality of being able to sense and perceive the subtle vibrations, the energies, and subtle currents of life. And that, in my understanding and my experience, is truly the superpower of number 2. And also, funnily, it's Achilles' heel. 2 is like a sponge, right? So these are people that they're very intuitive and can connect to spiritual dimensions, even shamanic dimensions, really, really perceive subtle frequencies, subtle energies, right? That enables them to like feel people very deeply, very precisely. 2s are highly empathic, right? Very often you hear people saying about themselves that they're empaths, and it's really like, for me, archetypically, like as an archetype, that is represented, like the empath is represented by the number 2. And they also serve as wonderful listeners, healers, counselors. But I said they're like a sponge, right? And in being a sponge, I mean just people that almost like don't have a skin, right? Like this a natural defense mechanism that many of us has, and they're simply absorbing a lot of information from the outside, a lot of frequencies and energies and subtle currents. This can be super interesting in the sense that it allows them to truly feel environments, people, energies, spaces, and so on. But on the downside, this high sensitivity can turn into overwhelm very quickly, right? Like feeling inundated by those same energies coming from the outside or coming from people, feeling as if one has no defense mechanisms. So it's a delicate path to tread on that requires, well, a lot of sensitivity, right? Like a lot of fine tuning, and definitely the 2 is not, a kind of like a fast galloping entity, like for example number 8. Again, another episode has been created about that number. You can go ahead and listen. A very different tempo, right? So 2 is much more slow pace, needing things like step by step to they cannot digest too much at a time. And that's very important to understand about number 2. The next thing I really want to dive into is the quality of receptivity. In its nature, 2 is simply open and vulnerable to life. And when I say open and vulnerable, right, sometimes we hear the word vulnerable and we interpret it as something weak or negative, but I'm not talking about it in that way. I'm talking more about an energetic posture or energetic structure that they cannot change. It's simply what it is. I mean, twos are highly feminine, right? So it's like a highly feminine number, very often even representing like this natural mother energy, a motherly kind of like listening, embracing, womb-like kind of warm energy, tenderly, nourishing and caressing her baby, or right, a little seed, allowing it to grow tenderly and protecting it like from any disturbance. So in a sense, as I said, it's highly vulnerable and open, and life simply penetrates into it and informs it with energies, with information, with impressions, and so on, right? Just open, and there's nothing they can do about it. And that, again, it sounds a bit like, oh man, it's like, it sounds unfair, but that is their superpower. It's like, that's what makes them into such amazing, healers, for example, or counselors, or psychologists, or nurses, right? There's something so understanding, right? I mean, being so open allows the two to understand people really well and have a very keen eye for the smallest details, external and internal, right? Seeing all the subtle cues in people, having an eye for beauty and aesthetics, and really, really feeling into where the other person is at the moment and not overriding their needs or not asking too much, not demanding. In that sense, they're very attentive. So that receptivity is a true gift. They usually also have a natural talent for music and the subtle messages that music brings with it. Really, so receptivity here is really a key quality of number two. I hope that maybe those of you who already listened to number 6, if you're kind of like following along, you might already feel this like difference in frequency. They're not really the same. Another quality that maybe is not talked about as often about number 2 is attractiveness. And I want to take a moment to really dive into this one. It's super interesting, and I find that to be really strong with number 2, although it usually is attributed to other numbers such as 5, for example. But for example, women with strong 2s may have a natural form of seductive power to them. Not in a negative way, although it may be used in a negative way sometimes by some people. But 2 is simply like a magnetic force. And again, I'm talking about an inherent energetic posture. Because 2 is not a force like number 8, right? Like number 8 that pushes forward, that drills through something. It's actually working in it's actually working in a totally different way. It actually pulls things towards it, right? Just like the feminine energy. It's like a magnetic force. So it pulls things towards it rather than piercing outwards. So they often have this deep gaze with a lovely tenderness to it, like a soft beauty that wants to pull you in. And not many people know this, but 2 is actually a rather erotic number and has a strong sensual and sexual nature. So sometimes people are going to see like 2s, strong 2s in their chart and not understand like where all this sensual like desire comes from, or like erotic dreams or wishes and a kind of sensual, almost like a sensual knowledge. There's something like about them that just knows this language. They know how to touch and right get sexual, and that's really, really beautiful about number 2. Something attractive and seductive and sensual and erotic. The only thing is that they often lack the confidence, again, to go for it or ask for what they want and need, but they can't attract it, in a sense, like to make it happen to them, bring it to them. Now, this can also be true to men. The reason I'm saying women here, women with strong twos have like this natural seductive power. It doesn't mean that men don't, but the thing is, usually men who have strong twos in their core numbers, especially life path, expression number, or soul urge number, they might have some conflict with themselves. I would say, especially as a life path, men very often have like a self-image issue about themselves, as maybe being too weak or not assertive, not man enough. So that's part of why sometimes this power is not fully activated in them, but still there is that sensual and sexual nature and erotic nature for sure. Now, before I talk about this amazing quality coming up, like the ability to see others, I want to take a moment to remind you that you can get yourself a numerology reading, and that's one of the best ways to feel the life-changing effects and also the power of numerology. You hear me talking about different numbers, and these numbers can be your chart, but it's important to know how they play as one symphony, how the numbers connect into one picture that makes sense, it dances together. And what does that mean about you, about your life, about your potentials, about your challenges, about what's awaiting for you? And so if you want to get yourself a reading, contact me directly through my website. Again, the links are already provided. I mentioned that. And book yourself one. You can find the links in the podcast episode, in the podcast description. And again, second thing is, if you wish to pursue numerology as a career, or simply want to pursue numerology in a much more in-depth manner, I want to remind you that I offer a full path of certification from beginner to expert numerologist. Simply contact me directly to know more. Having said that, let us keep going with number 2. So another quality that I feel is super special and touching about number 2 is the ability to see others. So the 2 has this beautiful ability to put itself in other people's shoes, and in a sense always see the two sides of the coin, right? I have a certain desire, but also you have a certain desire, and very often people overlook what the other person in front of them really needs, and 2 is truly different in that way. I mean, they're really able to see the other side of the coin. They're able to see you. And that makes them into very compassionate beings and natural peacemakers, real natural listeners, people who are able to put their ego aside in order to accommodate something bigger than themselves, like a bigger need than what they need at the moment. Maybe they want to make sure that everyone has it, like that everyone feels well, you know. It's like, and in that way they're really kind, really kind. They don't like fighting and will always tend to be accommodating and kind to the people around them, and in general to people in large. By and large, and they really see you and want your best because they understand what you're going through. And that's, again, so beautiful and really connects to me saying that they can be like healers, right? Or therapists or psychologists. This tendency may become imbalanced, right? Sometimes, as you see, very often, it's funny, like with the 2, there's like 2 sides also, right, for everything. It's very interesting. You can see this very, like, the swing can be a little like steeper and more extreme here with the 2. They may become imbalanced as the 2 will be too accommodating, for example, and by doing so not respect their own boundaries. For example, like being overly nice, being overly accepting, when in fact they really want to say no. And that's something that is usually hard for a 2 to learn, how to say no, how to set boundaries. They feel that they don't have those defense mechanisms. Things penetrate them, things very easily overpower them. And very often they're just too kind. They're too much. They're smiling when somebody says something not nice because they just don't want to insult them or make them feel bad about having said something not nice, for example. It's typical to behavior. So again, there are all these fine tunings we need to do as a two. Another very strong quality, I mentioned that very briefly earlier, is being overwhelmed. So I'm touching a little bit more on the shadow right now. Twos are truly notorious for being overwhelmed from the smallest of things. And when I say the smallest of things, I really mean it. Sometimes it's like, like just a little bit, I can be in the street. Oh, I can't be in the street. I don't know. The noises are too much for me, or the cars are too much for me, or the smell is too much for me, or I can't see so many people, or even when everything is sweet and everything is kind, it's like I just can't have too much of whatever that is. So sometimes, again, it's like just this raw overwhelm. Sometimes this tendency goes just a bit overboard, which makes it difficult for them to contain life's pressures. And anything that is less than really very soft, gentle, and caressing. And I'm not saying that part of that is not natural. Part of that is really, really natural. They need like a soft, gentle, and caressing setting around them, whether it's in their work environment or relationship, or the way their friends treat them, or their family. But in a sense, everybody has to deal with this world. The world has all energies at once. And no matter what number we are, as a universal law, we have to learn to live in this life. This still doesn't mean that for some of us it can be a little bit harder than others. But we need to find our ways. And for two, this can be a little bit challenging. Especially in today's society, in today's world. It's still a very rough world, a tough life. It's not a Luna Park, not a picnic. It can be really, really trying. So I hear you, fellow twos. I also have some twos, not that central, but central enough. So I know what that means. Dealing with resistance can be, or with the simplest arguments or disputes, by the way, can be really, really tough for them. Can be sometimes even debilitating, like they just shut off. So important to know that about yourself if you're a two, and find ways to, strengthen yourself, deal with it, find some strengthening elements and anchors. Kind of like, going on the same line of what we just mentioned, I want to talk about the tendency of the two to hide, okay? They very often hide from life. Again, it's very much connected to the same quality of overwhelm and feeling like I don't have any protection. But the reaction is I hide from life. They don't dare. They always feel unready, unripe. As if they need more time, more space, a little bit more support, a little bit more healing, a little bit more studying, before they can go, quote unquote, out there and live their life. So they may have a strong tendency for avoidance and never get to actualize themselves. And in a sense, give up like huge chunks of their potential. Like a huge chunk of their potential simply remains dormant and unlived because they are simply not daring to try whatever that is. It's like, just an example, like I'm studying numerology and I study. I get to the place I'm already certified. That's it. All I need to do now is simply go ahead and, start giving readings. And that's when I quit. I feel like I'm not ready. I can't, whatever. The excuses are going to pop up for every person in their own unique way. But by and large, I simply feel I can't and I won't. And I will find different excuses for the why. So that's really interesting. I see it a little bit like a child that hides behind their parents, behind their mother's skirt, or a baby that doesn't want to go out of the womb. That's really a strong metaphor for this quality. It's like they never feel ready. They always want to be protected. Again, enveloped and embraced in this warm, protective womb. They can be extremely shy, introverted, lacking confidence, also in social settings and relational contexts. Simply not like stepping in, not making things happen sometimes, or just waiting too much. Interestingly, right, waiting or cosmic timing, right, this magnetic power is part of their incredible superpower. They just know how to wait for the right timing, and that is incredible. When to move. It's like they're listening to the cosmic weather, and when time is ripe, they move. In the shadow side of that quality, they simply always keep waiting and they never move. They always feel it's not yet the right time. And this is something to watch out for and notice when you're simply procrastinating forever. Next thing I want to mention is the importance of relationships for number 2, but also the qualities or the tendency for dependency and symbiosis that kind of take that simply come to life with number 2 whenever they interact. So 2s really need and love relationships, and they love the sense of bond. It's like me and you, and that sense of intimacy, that sense of exclusivity. Like it's you and me, it's our connection. They prefer it much more on spending time with a group of friends. They love that sense of specialness that any kind of friendship or relationship has to offer. It's really their nature to exist in close relationships and intimacy. It nourishes them, it feeds their heart, it feeds their soul, and they truly thrive in that. It's a home for them, it's a safety for them. They love that cuddly feeling, that hugging feeling. It's a sense of protection, it's a sense of connection, and they truly, truly and deeply need that. They do, however, tend to develop strong dependency on their partners or their closest friends, and oftentimes become very symbiotic, for better or worse, right? Sometimes, again, some degree of symbiosis is completely natural. I mean, it's something that happens with friends or partners for sure. But sometimes it's a little bit like I'm putting too much of my eggs in one basket. Like I'm really putting too much on my trust or my security, so to speak, in the hands of a relationship or a person. I hide behind that relationship. I become truly and deeply dependent on that person being there all the time, or giving me that feeling that I'm their only person and they're always there with me, and I always need to know that they love me and they touch me and they see me and they hear me. And I sometimes do not generate these qualities by myself, and that can create a certain weakness, like a energetic weakness on the level of self wholeness, or having a center, having a solid spine. And also being too symbiotic, like not knowing how to separate myself from other people's energies and truly coming back to my own energies, like mixing everything. So that's important to remember, to know how to separate these worlds and come back to my world while still truly maintaining and also fostering healthy, loving, kind relationships in my life. So 2s are highly sensitive, are empathic, are intimate beings. They feel deeply, they are very intuitive, and sometimes tend to feel too overwhelmed by the dynamic pace of society. By and large, they are kind and gentle in their ways, and they don't put their ego in the center, which is truly, truly beautiful. My friends, this is, as always, I can talk and talk. Keep talking and talking about like number 2. There's so much to talk about from so many different angles. I think I'll stop here. We kind of gave like a pretty full picture about what number 2 is energetically. I hope this keeps inspiring you to go deeper into numerology, maybe even, again, study numerology, inspire others to listen to numerology and learn this beautiful science and art. And simply, don't forget, if you wish to get a numerology reading, contact me through my website link and book yourself one. If you wish to pursue numerology as a career path, or simply want to pursue it deeper than what books have to offer, I'm reminding you that I offer a full path of certification from beginner to expert numerologist. So simply check my website link, read more, and then contact me directly to know more and dive deeper. And as always, my friends, I wish you all the best, and I will see you in the next episodes. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you did, and you want to go deeper into numerology, check out my website, tom-eckert.com. You can also book a numerology reading or even study numerology yourself through my courses. I'll see you in the next episode.